So the question then really comes down to, what does it mean to be free? What on earth do we even mean by that? Free from what is the way to think about it. What is it you want to be free from? When most neuroscientists could answer like that. But in fact, it's not. They don't think about it that much. But what it is they think about it, the subparts. But what is the brain for? Is the underlying question is, it's a decision-making device. It's there to make decisions. And so it has to gather information from all kinds of sources in order to make a proper decision from moment to moment, second to second. It is a decision-making device. And if you just think about it, here's a skeletal view of the human body, and we can do an experiment. Stick out your hand, touch the tip of your nose, and you will have the sensation that, in fact, your nose and the tip of your finger were touched at the same time. But in fact, the neuron that identifies that you were touched at the tip of your finger is about 3.5 feet long, and your nose neuron to the processes that go on to make this comparison are 2 or 3 inches long. And yet there's this sense of simultaneity. So the information is gathered, 250, 500 milliseconds, people argue about this, computed, a decision is made, and you get the sensation of conscious experience, and it comes together after the information has been gathered. So you can see evidence of this all over. I'll give you an example from our own research. Let me put those up. And then this is a reference to the famous work of Benjamin Libet, who 25, 30 years ago now, working at the University of California, San Francisco, demonstrated that during the course of neurosurgical procedures where the patient was awake, he could stimulate the actual cortical surface that represents sensation from the hand, and it wasn't until 500 milliseconds later that the patient felt the sensation. There was a processing time. There's time to consciousness is the idea. So using these processes, as we've demonstrated before, we now no longer look at the brain as we did 40 years ago as a static system, but we can look at it and see it as this dynamic, ever-changing system that is constantly in motion and in action through these blood measures. And using blood flow measures, excuse me. And using these techniques, very ingenious experiments are done. This is work by John Dylan Haynes and his group at Oxford, where they're basically looking at the mechanisms that are involved in making a particular choice, and they can find the antecedents they maintain up to 10 seconds before an act is made. By looking at the MRI and seeing the pattern of results, they can make a prediction with high accuracy what the person is going to do. So the notion is that it's all in there, it's all happening, and when you think you're willing it uniquely at the end, that's just an illusion. Actually, the brain's taking care of the whole deal for you. So here, when you add all that up together, here's what you get. You get the causal chain claim, as I call it. The brain enables the mind, and the brain is a physical entity.
4. Cause and effect through alien forces. These are environmental forces that, unlike rain and minerals, they don't have any direct connection with the wheat. These are forces like hail or passing animals or nearby plants, and they influence all of the other 3 factors as a whole. Now, obviously, a plant can't get up and move, but for us, regardless of the fact that we don't determine any of the first 3 factors in our development, we can influence all of them only by choosing our surroundings. It is our single point of freedom in the physical world. And it's from this point that we can harness these laws to sling us in the direction of our goal. Because a person can have negative or weak first and second factors, and just by placing those factors and the system of development in the proper environment, the quality of development can be enhanced and its speed accelerated enormously. The worth of our life is judged only by this because once having chosen an environment, all of these laws kick in again. And that environment then shapes all of our future conditions. And that's why the Kabbalists advise us to choose the right books, the right friends, and the right teacher.
I think our behavior is the product of physical processes in the brain. On the other hand, when you have a brain that consists of 100 billion neurons connected by 100 trillion synapses, there is a vast amount of complexity that means that human choices will not be predictable in any simple way from the stimuli that have impinged on it beforehand. We also know that that brain is set up so that there are at least two kinds of behavior. There's what happens when I shine a light in your eye and your iris contracts, or I hit your knee with a hammer and your leg jerks upward. We also know that there's a part of the brain that does things like choose what to have for dinner, whether to order chocolate or vanilla ice cream, how to move the next chess piece, whether to pick up the paper or put it down. That is very different from your iris closing when I shine a light in your eye. That second kind of behavior, one that engages vast amounts of the brain, particularly the frontal lobes, that incorporates an enormous amount of information in the causation of the behavior, that has some mental model of the world that can predict the consequences of possible behavior and select them on the basis of those consequences. All of those things carve out the realm of behavior that we call free will, which it is useful to distinguish from brute involuntary reflexes, but which doesn't necessarily have to involve some mysterious soul.
We've got a sort of a sandwich here. There's, on one level, there's the determinism. And then when the evolving entity gets ready, gets in the right position to do so, it can transcend that determinism and use it. Now we want to talk about fate, which is, as it were, above the freedom. And it must be distinguished from the determinism. Fate is not determinism. The fate says the other way around. Now, for example, let's say you want to go to San Francisco, and you come to a barrier that says detour, road closed for repairs. Well, a deterministic law universe, you'd have to stop there. But because you're intelligent, you can find a way around, go up another street or something, even if at worst get out of your car and take the BART or something, do some alternative route. And that would be impossible for determinism. Fate says it doesn't matter what you do. Whatever is going, let's say you're going to meet such a person in San Francisco, that's the part that's fated. It's the destination that's fated, not the way you get there. Determinism has to do with the details of the routing, whereas fate has to do with the bottom line.
I think the hidden agenda, and not so hidden very often, for all of this is concern about free will. I think that at the bottom of the barrel, what people are really worried about is that if we have an entirely naturalistic and ultimately, in a certain sense, mechanistic at the nano level, at the protein level, if we have a mechanistic theory of consciousness, this will show that, oh my gosh, we don't have free will, and then life has no meaning, and I can't be responsible for my best or worst deeds. And that doesn't follow, and deflects them from taking these ideas seriously, because they really don't want them to be true. My approach to that is to challenge that desire and say, no, everything you want or should want in the way of free will, you can have on this picture. And let's figure out how it's done. For billions of years on this planet, there was life but no free will. Physics hasn't changed, but now we have free will. The difference is not in physics, has nothing to do with determinism or indeterminism. It has to do with, ultimately, with biology, particularly evolutionary biology. What has happened over those billions of years is that greater and greater competences have been designed and have evolved. And it's that can-do, it's that power that we have, which is natural, but it's that power which sets us aside from every other species. And the key to it is that we don't just act for reasons, we represent our reasons to ourselves and to others. The business of asking somebody, why did you do that? And the person being able to answer it's a very simple and it's an everyday phenomenon, but it is the key. And it is the key to responsibility. And in fact, the word responsibility sort of wears its meaning on its sleeve. We are responsible because we can respond to challenges to our reasons. Why? Because we don't just act for reasons, we act for reasons that we consciously represent to ourselves. And this is what gives us the power and the obligation to think ahead, to anticipate, to see the consequences of our action, to be able to evaluate those consequences in the light of what other people tell us, to share our wisdom with each other. No other species can do anything like it. And it's because we can share our wisdom that we have a special responsibility. It's, as the old tag would have it, it's noblesse oblige. We have the power, and that's what gives us the obligation. And that's what makes us free in a way that no bird is free, for instance.
Your book on free will, you're framing the issue of free will in a very, what will strike most people as an unusual way. People usually think of free will as opposed to determinism. Mm-hmm. Of course, by determinism we mean the idea that basically the future of this universe is inevitable because the universe is this mechanistic thing, it works according to rules. And in principle, if you understood everything about the state of the universe and everything about the rules that govern it, you could predict what happens tomorrow. And that includes people's brains. They're deterministic, and so free will is kind of an illusion because of determinism, because of the truth of determinism. That's the argument, traditional argument against free will.
That's the traditional argument, yes.
You're saying, I think you're saying that actually the two are compatible in some meaningful sense of both terms.
Absolutely compatible,
okay.
Yes. So I'm just a compatibilist. There have been compatibilists for hundreds of years.